in a constant peaceful panic.
Where the hell's all the bodies?
There ain't none.
But where'd this come from?
Don't ever toss me a finger again.
Hi, Naveen. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Howard. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thanks. Very good to speak to you. Thanks very much for your time, and congratulations on the movie. I watched it again last night, and I really enjoyed it. It's kind of a really kind of fresh take on this kind of. I know you wanted to make this kind of neo-Western thriller, but it's kind of a very fresh take. Specifically, it's very much more of a slow burn than I was expecting it to be based on the kind of the trailer. Was that something that was kind of from the get-go? You always wanted it to be very much more of a slow burn, just to kind of give it a kind of a spin that people kind
Absolutely.
of weren't expecting.
Yeah. So thanks for that. As I say, it has been a long journey. So when someone watches and they give you feedback, it's always a pleasure. I grew up watching films from the 70s and 80s, and the filmmakers then had this luxury of sort of bringing the audience into their time. It was not such a fast, quick attention, short attention spans sort of time. So if you look at Coen Brothers and Tarantino and things like that, they've preserved that luxury even today.
Yeah.
So when Ashley and I started working on the script, that was important to us. We wanted to say that, hey, the audience has to come into the space and sort of enjoy the movie. And another thing, one of my mentors, Stephen Milburn Anderson, gave me was, especially in an indie setting, if you increase the tension way early in the film, or if you increase the pace, then you have no place to go.
Yeah.
So in this, what we wanted to do was we wanted to have a very strong start, get the audience hooked, and then sort of take them on this journey, set up everything properly, and then take them on this journey.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my later questions about the actual performances, because this kind of really focuses, it kind of revolves around kind of the characters more so than the actual story itself, I guess.
Yes.
But before I talk about that, I want to talk about you. I mean, you mentioned there that it's a long trek now to get where you have done. I think it's about 15 years or so since the original idea came to you, no?
Yes. The original idea was brought to me by Dr. Neil Justin. He's an anthropologist based in Arizona, and I had just done my first film as a producer, and I met with him, and he came up with this idea, The Last Victim, and it was at the time it was a homage to films like Deliverance and Breakdown. Breakdown had just come before that, and we were like, wow, let's try to make something like that in that setting. But when I picked it up again in 2017 and brought Ash, we wanted to bring it to the modern day, and we had seen No Country for Old Men, and we had seen what Taylor Sheridan had done with Hell or High Water and Sicario, right, things like that. So we were like, this is more of a modest budget film, but we wanted to sort of have it live in that world.
I also believe that it also took so long, not just because of the actual script kind of evolving, but also I believe that the location was also kind of very pivotal to what you were going to make, and that kind of just literally fell to the floor because the forest itself burned down, no?
Absolutely. So we had location scouted it, and to the T, and about 2-3 weeks before the planned filming, Mount Lemmon in Tucson, the entire mountain burned down, and right. And it's not like you can go 2 months later when the forest fire stops and says, okay, we can pick it up. It's all burned down, and then as things happen, life happens, and Doc had his priorities and I had my priorities, and so the script sat there for about 15 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And what was it that kind of sparked or triggered you to decide, right, 15 years later, it's time now, not only just to get it in, to bring it to fruition, but to direct it yourself? Was it always your intention to direct this film from the word go, or was that just something that came about because you'd been cutting your teeth for so long as a producer, you thought, right, this is the film for me to make my mark now?
So I always wanted to be a director. I went to film school to direct, but I got into producing so that I can learn nuts and bolts and finance and things like that. So when it came time to direct, that I'll have the knowledge or the experience to sort of know how to make it a reality. So the realities, quote unquote is in my own hands. But so that was the plan. So when I originally did we wrote the script and everything like that, I was going to be the co-director. Doc was at the time 67 years old, and he wanted to direct it, and we decided that we'll direct it together. But when I picked it up, when I decided to direct again, I was going through scripts that I had read through the past, and this script kept calling because on one hand it was contained. I love the setting, I love the characters, and I thought because it's contained as my first film, it could be something that I can manage. It's not going to get out of hand. And around the same time, I got a call from Doc out of the blue, and Doc said, and he was 82. He's probably 85 now, but 82 at the time. And he goes, Naveen, we're going to make The Last Victim, and you're going to direct it. And because of other circumstances, he had to step out again. But that call prompted me. I was like, okay, I was already thinking about it. And
now or never, no, yeah.
Exactly. So just went for it.
Fantastic, yeah. And then obviously, I imagine because of kind of your producer's background, that really kind of helped you, not just to get everything together, but that cast is, for a debut director, that's just a fantastic cast. I imagine you had a lot of say in how that came about now because of your 15 years background as a producer, working as a producer, no?
Absolutely. I think the experience helps, but there was also a hurdle that I had to cross, because I had built a career as a financier producer. So when a financier producer goes out there and says, I want to direct a film, it's usually, people roll their eyes, or, it's
another one.
So, yeah. So I had a lot of, exactly. So I had a lot of insecurities about it. So there was a producer who I was working with at the time to co-produce things. So I gathered up the courage, and I basically went up to him and said, look, I want to direct a film, and I have a script. I want you to read it. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you wanted to direct. And then so I sent him the script on a Friday, and on Sunday he sends me this one line note saying, good script, let's talk Monday. When I talked to him Monday, he's like, what would you like me to do? And I knew that was a good sign, because he had loved the script. And I said, hey, you want to produce this with me? And he's like, absolutely. And then I have to give credit. Like, we went through the process, and Ralph was the first one to come on board.
Right.
I had seen The Witch. I was a huge fan of The Witch. I had watched the trailer itself like 200 times just to hear his voice. And that was a huge part in the movie that we were making. And, he was the first person we went to. He accepted it, and that brought a lot of credibility to me as a director, because, he had worked with greats. And
I mean, I love him. It's funny, but every time I watch him, I think you said the same in other interviews, I always remember him as Finchy in The Office. And he's like, all right, how are we doing? And then all of a sudden you do like this, and he's a fantastic actor. And the fact that you put him kind of narrating bits is kind of, it's a risk. Well, it's not a risk because he's fantastic, but it could have, because he's like, I'm used to him singing in The Office, so it's kind of a big risk. You've got all these American actors, and you put this English actor in there to narrate with this really strong accent, and he's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a pro. And I don't know if you remember Buster Scruggs, and he's in there for a very short period, but the way he nailed the accent in that one, I was just floored. And so it was a pleasure to have him. And he was a collaborator. So we would discuss about the character, and he would bring a lot to the character, to the backstory. So on set, like I tell people, I probably gave him direction 2 times, because during prep he had gotten the role right, and he was living it. And there were a lot of times, not just him, there were a lot of times that I would forget to call cut, because these actors were like such a pleasure to watch, and I would forget that on set. I felt like I was watching a movie.
Things got complicated with Manny.
Are you sure you got no idea what happened?
No, sir.
I guess she's got 9 other fingers.
When this is all over, we have no truck, no bodies, no conviction. That's how our wonderful system works, I guarantee it.
Get lost.
Would you say that maybe played into some of the longer scenes, or was that all kind of plotted out beforehand?
It was plotted out beforehand, but I already knew that, there's a part of me was afraid that we would, if the performances were not there, if the timing was not right, we would have to cut it down. But luckily it was all there, and And when we had a couple of versions where we started cutting things down, and I would just not feel right in my heart. So we went back to the to let the audience come into the filmmaker's space.
Waldo, come on, boy! Run! Run!
Someone else was here.
She see anything?
Yep.
I want to talk a little about Ali's character, because that's also quite an interesting. I was watching an interview that she did the other day, and she was saying that she was really intrigued by the character because of the way that she's got this kind of deviating moral compass in the film, which is something, I mean, most of these kind of films, they just go for whatever they need to go. But here it really kind of, not just all the way through, but with the ending, without giving anything away, it really kind of shows this spectrum that she travels across, with this moral compass is just moving from one side to the other, and she doesn't really know exactly how she should kind of react to what's happened. No, that must have been quite complicated, not just in directing, but kind of the whole writing of that particular character. No.
Absolutely. It was because, we wanted Ali to be sort of the character that all of us can relate to, who probably is sheltered from, the wilderness or the terrains and things like that, who's untested. But the film is also an exploration of how much can you be pushed until you strike back, or, for example, the violence that lurks within every one of us. But particularly to her character, one of the things is, confronting your own demons, and so where does that morality, where does that morality lie when it gets into survival and you become a feral animal? You're forced to become a feral animal, and then you have to live in society as well. You know what I mean? Like you. So that's one of the things that I the type of films that I love. They are entertaining. There's a lot of like good storytelling, but at the same time, it leaves you with things to think about, or characters that you can sink your teeth into the characters' lives and the surroundings and things like that. And one of the themes, isolation. When I went to Arizona and when I started going into border towns and seeing people living in a town with population of 20 or 15, or and they have their own ideologies and they're completely disconnected from the rest of the world and things like that. So there was, on one hand, as a filmmaker, it was a romantic view of that, but then there's also a reality of those people where progress had sort of left them, and they're left with the pieces, and they're trying to put the lives back together from that standpoint. So we wanted to put the characters in that world.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a bit about Ron as well, because I was reading that quite a few of your actors, I imagine most of the crew and a lot of the actors were quite starstruck when Ron Perlman showed up. And I think a sense of humor kind of foxed you all a little bit at the beginning. Now, can you tell me about? I think he was pulling all of your legs at the same time, and you all kind of thought, "Whoa, is this the way he's going to be the whole way through the film?" And then it kind of, I think the penny dropped when you realised what was going on with his sense of humor, and then you just kind of all clicked together. No,
absolutely. With Ron, he was on top of our list, and but everyone were intimidated to give him the offer because they were like, "Oh, Ron's never going to do it." So we went to 2 or 3 people on the list, and we got no's. And we were like, you know what? It's just a week that you give for the offer. Let's go to Ron. And we sent it on a Friday, and typically you get it a week later or whatever, when the actor has read it. With Ron on Saturday, at like 11 a.m. or something like that, the agent calls and says, Ron loves the script, he wants to do it. And I was in the car, we were location scouting with my DP, Lucas, and my associate producer. And it was chaos in the car, because, it was like, pull over to the side. Ron just did that, and then when I told Ali, and Ali was like, Ron's doing the sheriff. And so everyone were fanboys of Ron. And so I met Ron the day before the shoot. I was finishing a day of shoot, and they said, hey, Ron's here for fittings. Why don't you come and meet him at the office? So I went and met him, and we hit it off. And we talked about, and one of the inspirations for the role that Ron does is Peter Falk's Columbo back in the 70s, like the investigate, And so Ron knew Peter Falk, and he's like, "Oh, I love Columbo," and so he kind of got the essence of like what he wanted to do. And then we went upstairs to the edit suite, and we had already assembled the first 10 minutes of the film. So we showed him, "Hey, here's the here's the first 10 minutes. This is the tone." He totally got it, and the next day he showed up, and so he asked me, "Naveen, what are we doing?" And so it was my first day, and I'm nervous, and I'm giving him direction. And as I'm giving direction, in the middle of it, he goes, "Naveen, I know what I'm doing," with a straight face.
Yeah.
And I was unnerved, and and then later on, the DP told him like, "Hey, Ron, that's your mark, and you have to turn so that the light can hit you in the right way." And he said the same thing to the DP, and DP came to me and said, "Ron told me, I'm scared." He's like, "Ron told me." But later on we found out that one time, this is my favorite moment. So there was this truck that I don't know if you remember the scene where he finds Waldo. So it was out in the wilderness, and there's a sheriff's truck that pulls up, and it's parked there. So so we were setting up the shot, and and the truck was pulling up, and I thought it was one of the transportation teams who were pulling it up. So I was basically having him move, and then having him move back and moving to get the right shot. And after doing it 10 times, I ran up to give direction, and the windows rolls down, and Ron's sitting in the car. And I was like, "Oh my God, Ron, I didn't know it was you. I thought it was one of the transportation team members." And he's like, "I've been accused of more,
Worst things, huh?
something like that."
No, we're running out of time. So, I mean, thank you so much for your time. I know that you've got another, I think you've caught the director's bug, and I think, according to IMDb, anyway, you've got another project called Ruthless, which it sounds very kind of a similar theme thing in kind of a small town. So I look forward to hopefully speaking to you about that one sometime soon, if that comes to fruition soon. And I wish you the best of luck with this film when it comes out next week.
Thanks so much, Howard. It has been
all
a
right.
pleasure.
Cheers. Nice to speak to you, Naveen. Hope to speak to you again soon. All right. Take care. All the best.